Let's start with one simple question. How do you imagine the devil? Is he a menacing, human-like horned figure, all dressed in black, eyes glowing in the dark? Perhaps a monstrous animal-like figure with leathery bat wings, red scaly skin, a forked tail, and armed with a pitchfork? Alright, enough with the horror element. But really, where do these images come from? If we turn to the Bible, how is Satan described? And, most importantly, what exactly is he? In this video, we'll explore the biblical roots of Satan, digging beneath the surface to reveal his true origins, as well as his development over the ages. This is the story of Satan, the arch-villain of Christianity, and one of the most recognizable religious figures worldwide. Satan makes less than a dozen appearances in the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew word Satan appears in the Bible bearing the meaning of adversary, opponent, enemy, accuser, or slanderer. What's more, in the earlier passages, the word refers not to a supernatural being, but to human adversaries. For example, in 1 Samuel 29:4, the Philistines demand that David be sent away. Send the man back, lest in the battle he become an adversary to us. The Hebrew noun used for adversary here is Satan. Besides these terrestrial Satans, however, there is another, non-human, heavenly Satan, who is a member of the Divine Council. The Divine Council is a motif which appears in Near Eastern religious traditions, from Mesopotamia to Syro-Palestine. The idea already exists in the Sumerians and the Akkadians, as well as the religious texts of Ugarit. In Akkadian, the Divine Council is Puchrum Ilani, and in Ugaritic, Puchur Ilim. In the Bible, it is described with different names, such as Adat El. God has taken his place in the Divine Council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. In the Hebrew Bible, God presides over the Divine Council, while the rest of the gods have been demoted to his angels, within the framework of monotheism. Satan, with the definite article Ha as Ha-Satan, is a member of the heavenly court, acting as the accuser or the prosecutor, being a subordinate of the god Yahweh. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Ha-Satan also came among them. Taking into consideration the fact that in ancient Hebrew, names are not accompanied by the definite article, the mere fact that Satan appears as Ha-Satan in the context of the Divine Council suggests that the title does not refer to a specific being, but rather to a function. It is more of a job title than a specific name. Satan's role as the accuser is evident in the book of Job, where he attempts to incriminate Job before God, who in turn tests Job to prove his faith. Ha-Satan does not act without God's permission, nor does he disobey him. His role is to help God find out if Job's moral virtue is more than superficial. Satan also appears as the accuser or adversary in the book of Zechariah, where he accuses the high priest, acting very much like a prosecutor in a courtroom, while the angel of God defends him, acting as his advocate. Then he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. These passages are dated to the period of the Babylonian exile, or shortly afterward, with the book of Job being dated around 530 and the book of Zechariah around 520 BC. It is clear that at this stage, the 6th century BC, Satan is neither the opponent of good nor a leader of demonic legions. He is simply a member of the divine court with a very specific duty of examining the moral integrity of mortals. There is no mention in the Bible of Satan's rebellion, a battle with God, or his expulsion from heaven. From the end of the Babylonian exile in 538 BC until the conquest by Alexander the Great in 332 BC, the Israelites were under Persian rule. In Zoroastrianism, the religion of the Achaemenid Persians, good and evil are engaged in an eternal cosmic struggle, respectively represented by the benevolent creator god Ahura Mazda and the malevolent dark spirit Angra Mainyu. Scholars suggest that it was prolonged contact with Zoroastrianism over the span of 2 centuries which may have influenced Jewish theology, transforming Satan into God's adversary and an entirely evil entity. Further foreign influences from Israel's neighbors, such as Mesopotamian, Canaanite, Egyptian and Greek ideas, may have also influenced, through direct or indirect paths, the development of the idea of Satan. Elements of these influences begin to appear in extra-biblical apocalyptic literature, which emerged during the intertestamental period, from 200 BC to 100 AD. Texts such as the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Book of Enoch discuss the duality of good versus evil, light versus darkness, and also introduce the first references to malevolent fallen angels who rebelled and were expelled by God. In the New Testament, which was written in Koine Greek, the opponent of God is called diabolos. The word, derived from the verb diavalo, which means to slander, to accuse someone secretly, is an accurate translation of the Hebrew word Satan. Satan's previous function as the accuser continues in the New Testament. He subjects Jesus to various tests in the desert to shake his faith and tempts people, leading them to sin. However, his powers are expanded to include more tasks in his portfolio, and he assumes a much more commanding role. He causes diseases such as leprosy, challenges Jesus' authority, tempts the apostles, spreads heresies and lies, and is the cause of all evil in the world. By the time of the revelation of John, written around 100 AD, Satan has become an apocalyptic beast, a dragon who remains bound in the abyss for 1,000 years. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. And he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. By this time, Satan is a fully developed evil entity, the malignant manifestation of all the evil that exists in the world. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. It is in the Revelation that we encounter the motif of the angelic fall from heaven, which was nowhere to be found in the Hebrew Bible, as well as the association of Satan with the ancient serpent. This comparison brings to mind the serpent of the Garden of Eden, which tempted Eve into eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this is what we'll be looking at next. Now the serpent, Nahash, was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden'?" The identification of the serpent in the Garden of Eden with Satan is taken for granted by most Christians nowadays. Indeed, the Church Fathers believed that the unnamed serpent that tempted Eve in the garden was none other than Satan himself. However, this has no foundation in the Bible, which at no point equates Satan with the serpent. The tempter role that is ascribed to the serpent draws from creation stories from other Near Eastern cultures. The identification of the snake with Satan is merely an interpretation, and in fact a much later one, dating anywhere from the 1st century before Christ to the 2nd century AD. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn! How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low! In the passage, the prophet Isaiah laments the fall of Lucifer, commonly known as the morning star, which refers to the planet Venus, visible in the morning sky before sunrise. In the Greek translation of the Bible, the term used was eosphoros, from eos, dawn, and phero, to bring, meaning the bringer of dawn. In the Latin translation, this term was translated as Lucifer, from lux, light, and fere, to carry, meaning light bearer. In the passage, the prophet metaphorically refers to the king of Babylon, whom he condemns for his hubris in thinking himself a god, and not to Satan. However, due to anachronistic and erroneous associations between the star falling from the sky and the image of Satan falling from heaven as an outcast angel, the name Lucifer became identified with Satan in the Vulgata, the 4th century Latin translation of the Bible. Such an identification was never made in the Bible itself, however. The fact that in the 4th century AD there existed a Christian bishop and saint named Lucifer Calaritanus demonstrates that Lucifer was not always identified with Satan. Satan's image changed radically during the Middle Ages. In very early Christian depictions, Satan is depicted with angelic features, beautiful and with a halo. Gradually, however, this angelic image gives way to a more demonic representation. This mosaic from 6th century AD Ravenna, Italy, is perhaps the earliest known depiction of Satan. Satan is depicted as a blue angel with a radiating halo. The red color, initially associated with the kingdom of heaven, would later be linked to hell. As Christianity took root in the Roman world, early Christians began to reject the old gods. The lustful, pastoral deity Pan, half man and half goat, was easily associated with the forbidden. Thus, Satan acquired his hooves and horns. Initially black, Satan later became depicted as red to emphasize his association with the fires of hell. Satan's animalistic characteristics were further enhanced by elements borrowed from various European religious traditions, such as the horned god Cernunnos of the Celts. Medieval artists, seeking effective ways to convey their message, did their utmost to depict Satan as terrifying as possible. Animal-like body, tail, pointed ears, claws, hooves, and even leathery bat wings. Theologically, the concept of Satan was transformed drastically during the Middle Ages, going from a passive adversary of God to an aggressive force of evil that actively interferes in human lives. The 14th century was a particularly dark period for Europe. The spread of the bubonic plague, famine, and constant wars dramatically heightened the fear of the devil and his influence in the collective unconscious. Satan was now seen as operating openly in the world, making pacts with witches, possessing people's souls, and forcing them to do his bidding. Like so many other concepts, the idea of Satan did not remain unchanged over time. From being an accuser in the divine council in the Hebrew Bible, Satan evolved under Persian influence into the adversary of good, eventually becoming a fallen angel, the ruler of hell, leader of demons, and the Antichrist himself. Nowhere in the Bible itself is Satan associated with Lucifer, and nowhere is a narration related to an angelic fall from grace to be found. No description of Satan exists in the Bible. Visually, today's stereotypical image of Satan was primarily shaped by artists of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, merging elements from diverse traditions, constantly evolving, culminating in the monstrous depiction that is ingrained in most people's minds today. So, how do you picture Satan? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, sharing, or leaving a comment below. Let me know if you would like to see more similar stuff in the future. See you next time on the Trails of History.